league mates are not going to know what hit them when you come into your fantasy football draft armed with the knowledge that these three wide receivers are the key building blocks of a good fantasy football team. My three favorite receivers right now, George Pickens, Jawan Jennings, and Matthew Golden of the Green Bay Packers. If you're brand new around here, make sure that you hit the like button on this video. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And let's break down my three favorite wide receivers, beginning with none other than George Pickens, who did rack up 64 catches for 987 yards with 4 touchdowns last year. He averaged 2.05 yards per route run. That was 23rd amongst all wide receivers, a 78.6 PFF offensive grade. George Pickens is an unbelievably good, deep down the field receiver. He's on a new team now. He is on, of course, the Dallas Football Cowboys, where he's probably playing with the best quarterback that he has ever played with. Looking last season with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields, he still went 17 for 577 and 2 on throws 20 yards or deeper down the field. But the big thing here is the upgrade in offenses. Last year, the Pittsburgh Steelers were bottom third in the entire NFL in pass rate over expectation. I mean, let's be honest, it's pass rate over expectation. Our expectation should be for Arthur Smith to pound the ball. That's exactly what he did. The Dallas Cowboys last season did not pound the ball, even when they went to their backup quarterback. But Dak Prescott, honestly, you guys know, a very underrated NFL quarterback. 2 seasons ago, Brian Schottenheimer's first year as offensive coordinator and play caller for the Dallas Cowboys, Dak led the NFL in pass completions and passing touchdowns, 4,500 yards and 36 passing touchdowns. Look at the guys who were on that offense catching passes. It's not exactly who you remember. Of course, it was a true breakout season for CeeDee Lamb with 1,700 yards and 12 touchdowns. But we had Jake Ferguson second on the team in receptions. Brandon Cooks was hanging around. Michael Gallup before he retired. Jalen Tolbert had 22 receptions, 12 for Kevontae Turpin. Not exactly what you'd call a murderer's row of pass catchers for that Dallas Cowboys season. I think that the addition of George Pickens to the Dallas offense, one, is going to be very good for George Pickens. I think it's going to get him back closer in a role to what he was at when he was in 2023, when he had almost 1,200 yards and 5 touchdowns. Only has 13 receiving touchdowns in his career. I think there's a chance, and I'm not just being a hot take artist here, I think he could match his career total in touchdowns this season in Dallas if things break the right way for him. He is an incredibly good player. Dak will be the best quarterback he's ever played with. And depending on where you're drafting, he is very, very inexpensive. Obviously, if you're drafting on some of the best ball sites, people know how good he is. But the consensus ADP, so this is across Sleeper, CBS, Yahoo, and ESPN, has him at the 72nd overall player. To me, that frankly seems absurd. I think his ceiling is crazy high. I think that we could almost see him, I think we could see him laughably beat this projection that my friend Mike Clay has: 72 receptions, 1,000 yards, and 8 touchdowns. 8 touchdowns, by the way, not that far away from what his career total would be. I think we could see him get to 1,213 yards, and a little bit of positive touchdown variance would be incredibly massive. Let's move on now to, yes, a player who is a little bit injured, and one Mr. Jawan Jennings. Currently, as of right now, he does have a calf injury. There's quote unquote no timetable for him to return, but the cost is totally appropriate. You are not having to pay through the roof for Jawan Jennings. Right now, his consensus average draft spot is 85th overall. That is in the 8th round, obviously, and I think that is pretty reasonable for a player who has the 25th highest scoring wide receiver game of the last 15 years. 46.5 points he did in week 3 against the Los Angeles Rams. I think that guy still exists. And more importantly, something that I want to note is there is this idea that Jawan Jennings was a year 4 breakout, which he was. I mean, let's be honest. He had less than 1,000 receiving yards in his career before, but he did have 5 touchdowns as a rookie. His yards per route run was, honestly, it was pretty fine. He had very few drops. His catch rate was very high. His missed tackles force were really strong. He absolutely broke out with 8.6 yards per target, a 60% catch rate, and also had a really strong targets per route run. He was a top 20 receiver in fantasy after Brandon Ayuk tore his ACL. Ayuk right now is on the PUP, and there is no timetable for his return. Ricky Pearsall has returned to practice. I think it's just very interesting that you are getting a guy who generated the production as strong as Jennings did last season. 83.1 offensive grade, 83.7 receiving grade, an incredibly strong yards per route run. To give you guys an idea, 2.26 amongst wide receivers would like truly put him in an elite category at the position. Do I think he can sustain 2.26? Honestly, I don't. I would be pretty surprised if he was able to do that. But I think that if you're just looking at things objectively in terms of projections, Mike Clay has Brock Purdy projected for an absurd 4,600 passing yards and 25 passing touchdowns. What's interesting about the projections is he's kind of middling it. He's basically saying Pearsall will be okay. Ayuk will be okay when he plays. We don't really know what Jennings is. But if you start to do any sliding around of that much of the offense, let's say George Kittle misses some time and is not able to put up his 1,000 yards. Let's say Ayuk takes longer to get back. Let's say there are some effects that Ricky Pearsall has as a result of his hamstring injury. Effectively, as long as Jawan Jennings is available there in week 1, I think he is about as solid and reliable as you are going to find in the entire National Football League. As a wide receiver, he is probably my top target in terms of who do I want as a third wide receiver on my fantasy football team. Sometimes in a certain league, maybe on Sleeper, even your fourth wide receiver, you can plug and play him in any week. And if he starts the season strong, I think there is a chance that he actually just out-targets and out-produces Brandon Ayuk. So we have George Pickkins and we have Jawan Jennings. These guys are layups. There's honestly nothing controversial about them at all. Now, our third guy here, there is a little something controversial about my guy, Matthew Golden. Not everyone loves Matthew Golden's receiving production coming from college. He was in college for 3 years. He played 20 games at the University of Houston before transferring. He was a good player in college. I wouldn't say that you could realistically call him a great player in college. A 16% target rate as a freshman, a 24% target rate before transferring to the University of Texas at Austin. The other thing about Matthew Golden is that, yes, he was not a huge part of the offense at the University of Texas, basically until the coaches woke up. When the coaches woke up, it was a totally different experience. They basically moved the offense away from Isaiah Bond and moved it to Matthew Golden. And when they did, the final 4 games of the season, which are, the most important games of the season when they were playing in all of these college football playoff games, Golden lit up everything for the offense. He went 3 for 73 against Texas A&M, then did have a down game against Clemson, 2 for 49, 8 for 162 against Georgia, 7 for 149 and 1 against Arizona State, including the 4th and 13 walk-off play, and then the entire team got dominated by Ohio State. Again, no one really anticipated him being a first-round wide receiver, but what happened was he was the 23rd overall pick in the 2025 NFL draft. I think in fantasy football, you could basically just draft first-round wide receivers blind, assuming that they're not fulfilling starting slots in your lineup, which they're not. Right now, Matthew Golden is a 9th-round pick on Sleeper. If you're drafting on the best ball sites, he's a little bit more expensive. He's more like a 7th-round pick, but even then, I'm totally in on Golden as long as you're kind of drafting him around the 40th wide receiver off the board. I think the best comparison you can draw for someone like Golden is Chris Olave. A lot of the guys who watch film, scouts, compared him to Chris Olave. I actually think he's faster and more explosive than Chris Olave, but also went to one of these blue blood programs and was not able to fully show off his skill set in college. Christian Watson tore his ACL. Don't think we're going to see him back. Jayden Reed is still not playing in 2 wide receiver sets. Jayden Reed in his career has only 33 snaps played with 2 wide receivers on the field. Savion Williams was drafted as well, which to me is a clear signal that we actually are probably going to see Romeo Doubs and Dontavian Wicks, kind of phased out of the offense, which, does feel a little bit harsh, but I think we can look at this alignment chart here from PFF and see the likelihood is that Matthew Golden and Romeo Doubs are going to lead this positional group in snaps, and that we're going to see Heath, Hardman, Savion, Wicks be rotational. We're going to see Jaden Reed be rotational, but Wicks is not going to play over Golden. Savion is not going to play over Golden. So it really would be, if you're not drafting Matthew Golden, you have to be a big believer in Dontavian Wicks, which I am not. At right around wide receiver 5, Golden to me is actually a hyper polished rookie with a sky high breakout ceiling. And I don't think Christian Watson is going to be back. Another key note here is there's sort of this thought that the Packers are going to be very run heavy. This is Matt LaFleur's coaching history. Now, have Matt LaFleur offenses been successful running? Absolutely. They were 5th in the NFL in rushing attempts last year, though. But in 2023, when Jordan Love and the Packers made the playoffs and actually won a playoff game, they were 15th in the NFL in rush, or 22nd in the NFL in rushing attempts, 15th in the NFL in passing attempts, 3rd in the NFL in passing touchdowns. Jordan Love played injured for all of last season. I think Jordan Love is going to be fully healthy. I think that he maybe shouldn't have played injured last year. There are more pass attempts than you would think out there. And this is another one where being in tune with the projections is going to get you pretty hip. We have Jordan Love projected for 4,000 passing yards and 26 passing touchdowns. And how about this? The only 100 target receiver on the team, Matthew Golden, being projected as the 39th highest scoring PPR wide receiver by my friend Mike Clay. You don't have to take this as gospel, but I would encourage you to look at this depth chart and see, where do you think he's wrong? Do you think there's more for Dubs? Do you think Watson returns? I personally think there's no chance. I don't think there's a big role for Wicks. I don't think there's a big role for Savion Williams. And that leads me to believe Matthew Golden is being way undervalued because of some negative biases that we have about this offense. So folks, you want to win your league, there are 3 very strong wide receivers for you to be clicking. I would encourage you to click them. I would encourage you to head over to Drafters Fantasy and check out our sponsor over there. You can use code Davis and sign up over at Drafters if you want to draft some fantasy football teams. Make sure that you like the video. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel for daily fantasy football videos, and I will